In the ongoing fighting between Thailand and Cambodia, does diplomacy stand a chance? The two sides have held their first face-to-face meeting in a regional push for peace. But without any let-up in the long-running conflict, what will it take to bring it to an end? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Dareen Abughaida. Yet another attempt to end a century-old border dispute between Cambodia and Thailand. Fighting is escalating, forcing hundreds of thousands of civilians to flee their homes on both sides of the border. Now, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, is taking the lead to end the violence and reach a peace deal. It all comes after a failed attempt by U.S. President Donald Trump to end the war. Defense ministers from the two countries are set to meet in the coming days in the hope of reaching what Thailand has called a true ceasefire. We'll discuss with our panel of guests whether that ceasefire is possible. But first, this report from Michael Apple.
A song calling for peace. These school children are the opening act in the Cambodian town of Siem Reap, where a mural was unveiled honoring fallen soldiers. But a ceasefire to end a long-running border dispute between Thailand and Cambodia appears elusive. It's a conflict that's killed dozens and displaced nearly 1 million people. It's been 2 weeks since a US and Malaysia brokered peace agreement fell apart.
It's Thailand and Cambodia, they're going at it again.
In Kuala Lumpur, a special ASEAN foreign ministers meeting brought Thai and Cambodian diplomats together as the bloc moves to salvage October's peace accord. Bangkok's top diplomat says discussions about reviving the ceasefire are scheduled for Wednesday.
The Cambodians want a ceasefire. Let's have a discussion on a ceasefire. And so we propose that our two militaries should meet as soon as possible. Let them choose the date.
Cambodia's defense ministry accuses Thailand of armed aggression and vows to defend its territory at any cost. The two countries share a more than 800-kilometer border, mapped in 1907 when Cambodia was a French colony. The exact demarcation is contested by Thailand, and several ancient sites along the border are disputed, including the renowned Preah Vihear Temple, a location the International Court of Justice has ruled is part of Cambodia. A recent march calling for peace on the streets of Cambodia's capital, Phnom Penh, saw more than 10,000 people rally behind the call.
Our people living along the border are feeling afraid and anxious, and nobody can work as they have to flee the areas they used to live in. Cambodia needs peace.
With no clear end in sight to the fighting, experts say Thailand's acting prime minister appears to have seized on feelings of nationalist fervour, recently dissolving parliament. He avoided a no-confidence vote and has scheduled snap elections for early February. It's a move which could strengthen the hand of the military. It comes at a time when opposition parties are grappling with calls to rein in what many young Thais see as the army's undue political influence in the kingdom. Michael Apple, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
Let's now bring in our guest joining us from Cambodia's capital, Phnom Penh. We're joined by Chhean Vannarith, chairman of Angkor Social Innovation Park and a former assistant to Cambodia's defense minister in 2011 and 2012. Joining us from Kuala Lumpur is Ilango Karapunan, an adjunct senior fellow at the Nanyang Technological University and former Malaysian High Commissioner to Singapore. Joining us from Bangkok is Phil Robertson, who's the Director of Asia Human Rights, Labour Advocates, and also the former Deputy Director of Human Rights Watch's Asia Division. Welcome to you all. Thanks so much for your time. Ilango, I'll start with you. So we're seeing renewed fighting, even as these ASEAN talks go ahead. Could this escalation then derail diplomacy?
Well, it could. I mean, anything is possible, right? But we also have to understand that both countries are, right now, I think they're committed to finding a durable solution to this conflict. The fact that they have decided to come to Kuala Lumpur shows that there is an intention to do so. And I think there is also this feeling among both countries that this conflict has gone on a bit too far, a bit too long. And if they don't step in to resolve it now, it could become one of those frozen conflicts. And I think there is a serious desire to do it. So I am more optimistic than pessimistic about the outcome of this talk.
Chhean, from Phnom Penh's point of view, why do ceasefires keep collapsing? And is Cambodia losing faith in dialogue?
Well, I think Cambodia still have faith in ASEAN, still have faith in international law and the international system that protect the rights and dignity of a small state. As a small state, I think Cambodia have been advocating for this third-party mediation in order to provide solution to this. As both sides has accused each other of violating the ceasefire, I think Cambodia have been clear and consistent that we need a third-party verification to ensure that those who violate the ceasefire will be punished. We cannot allow such kind of behavior of violating the ceasefire or violating the international law to evade without punishment or penalty. It will be a bad norm and dangerous norm for Southeast Asian region. So I think we need to step in and be more vocal and be more assertive in defending the ASEAN principles and the ASEAN Charter.
Okay, Phil Robertson, Thailand argues Cambodia has repeatedly violated ceasefires. From Bangkok's side, why does this round of talks, why should it rather be taken seriously, do you think? And Thailand, is it willing to make any concessions going into these talks?
Well, I think it's very important that we're seeing a decision to have the military commanders meet and discuss this issue. I mean, that's one of the things that the Thai foreign minister said very clearly, and that's a step forward. There's supposed to be a monitoring of a ceasefire by the ASEAN observers team. And, obviously the situation got well beyond that. Nobody's going to be ever able to prove who fired first. But what is quite clear is that on both sides, civilians are suffering terribly. We've had 500,000 Cambodians evacuate from the border areas, 500,000 Thais evacuate from the border areas. These are people are losing livelihoods, losing opportunities. They have no idea when they'll be able to return to their homes. It is a horrible situation, and the fighting has gone on far too long. And so I'm hoping that when they meet in Chanthaburi on the 24th of December, that we'll actually have some progress towards a real ceasefire.
And Ilango, obviously you have a lot at stake internationally for countries like China and the United States, right? Who are watching these talks very closely, we understand. But who actually has the most leverage in this conflict?
Well, quite hard to say. I think the U.S. has leverage because, the Thailand is, sort of an allied partner of the United States. Cambodia is closer to China. So I think both these countries have a certain degree of leverage to use in this conflict. But I think ultimately, my feeling is that the external dimension is not going to be as crucial as the internal dynamics of these two countries. I think there is, my suspicion is that there is a clear decision, understanding in the countries concerned that this conflict cannot continue indefinitely. And because, number one, it destroys the economy. Number two, it hurts people on both sides. So I think the impetus is coming more from the inside. But of course, the external players like United States and China do have an important role to play here.
Chhean, speaking of the internal dynamics, if we look at this conflict, its history traces back to French colonial maps, right, that placed certain temples inside Cambodia. How much of the fighting is driven by really unresolved colonial borders?
Well, I think Thailand have been
Chhean, go ahead.
Trying to reclaim what it's called lost territories to its neighbors and use its own unilateral in order to claim the lost territories. And Cambodia has used the Siem-Franco map in 1904 and 1907. And we used to use these maps to have this court decision at the International Court of Justice back in 1962 and again in 2013. And lately, after the killing of the Cambodian soldier in May this year, Cambodia brought the case of the 4 areas, contested area, to International Court of Justice again. So Cambodia's position has been clear that they rely on this Siem-Franco map thrown by the French colony in order to claim its territories. And this legalistic kind of approach have been pursued by the Cambodian government over the decades. So I think Thailand and Cambodia should go back to this legal interpretations and bring the case to the Court of Justice so that they can resolve the issues.
Phil, do you think that peace can be achieved without confronting that colonial legacy that we're speaking of?
Well, there's 2 issues here. I mean, the bottom line is that the 2 sides need to demarcate the border, and they have to do the tough work of demining the border and demarcating the border. The issue of the ICJ, it's very clear that Cambodia won the court case dealing with Preah Vihear and the surrounding areas around Preah Vihear. But that decision was not binding on any other parts of the conflicted border. So, I mean, Cambodia has been glossing over that fact in their claims that, everything needs to go to the ICJ because Thailand doesn't agree to do that. In the absence of agreement by both sides, the ICJ can do nothing. Therefore, it's time to just be very pragmatic and practical. Demine the border, demarcate the border, and figure out, both sides need to compromise. Both sides need to recognize that they're not going to get everything they want. But ultimately, for the sake of people on both sides, for the sake of civilians on both sides, and for the sake of cross-border trade, which was a tremendous part of both economies before this war, they need to get it done.
Ilango, what do you think? Should old court rulings be clarified? I mean, how do the 2 countries go about solving this? Or is this simply politically impossible, in your opinion?
Well, the court case, I think this is the background to the whole issue, but I don't think this is something that can be resolved at this particular time.
Why is that?
What's more important is that, why is that? Because I think the demarcations, as mentioned by our Thai colleague, the issues of 2 different types of maps which are being used. And I think, unless and until both sides agree to use one particular set of documents and data to talk about it, you can't move on. And number 2, Thailand does not agree with submitting this case to ICJ. Like our colleague from Bangkok mentioned, it needs both parties to play their role. So I think currently at this point, to be practical about the whole thing is that the focus should not be on the demarcation issues. I mean, that should, of course, be the long-term objective. Currently, we should look for, incentives, concrete, tangible incentives for both sides to stop this conflict for this time, while, looking for opportunities to resolve this longer-term problem of the demarcation of the borders.
Chhean, you agree with what Ilango has to say?
Well, the point that Cambodia brought the case again to the ICJ mid this year, only 4 contested, the most complex contested points. It doesn't cover the whole 800 kilometers of the borderline between the 2 countries. But so it's kind of low-hanging fruits solution. So the most complex, difficult to find solution, we can bring it to the International Court of Justice, and we have a existing bilateral mechanism, especially the Joint Border Commission, to negotiate on border demarcations. So that is already mechanism in place. But it doesn't mean that use the armed aggressions as a solution to solve all these problems. We need to maintain the status quo peacefully, while allowing the technical expert groups to negotiate and to demark the border. If we look at the current situation, it seems that the military of Thailand take over the control of the border, and the civilian expert group seems to not have much leverage and negotiation power with regards to the border demarcations.
So, Chhean, what happens if these sites in these areas then continue to be militarized in that way?
Well, I think this is a very dangerous move if a country allows the military to take over the political decisions. That will lead to very kind of escalatory kind of confrontations because I think the best way is to demilitarize and use civilians as a key negotiator to deal with this issue.
Phil, let me ask you about the Thai elections, because Thailand has called for snap elections in the middle of all of this going on, right? So do you think that strengthens
Correct.
Bangkok's negotiating hand, or then does it make any sort of compromise even more difficult?
It won't affect it one way or the other in the sense of like the actual negotiations between the militaries. I mean, what is quite clear is that the military of the Thai government is calling the shots on that border. And, you know, the military has made it very clear that they want to control high ground. They want to control certain areas, and they're prepared to do that. You know, and that's why I'm hoping that this December 24th meeting will bring the militaries together and start moving towards a ceasefire. You know, the problem, of course, is it is true that, you know, the acting prime minister, Anutin Charnvirakul, is, you know, running as a conservative. He, you know, is hoping to benefit from the ultranationalism that has happened on Thai side. You know, and this is part of the problem we're seeing, in fact, on both sides, is that, you know, in addition to the ongoing war, there's a social media war. And both sides are whipping up their citizens to support their cause. And, you know, it's creating turbulence in politics in both places. I think that, you know, we need to have a toning down of the rhetoric on both sides as these negotiations go forward. And hopefully the military can get there. And I hope that Anutin will not politicize this Cambodian Thai war to try to garner votes. But unfortunately, I think he's going to. He may not succeed, however, because, you know, he's facing a very strong progressive People's Party that won the most votes in the last election. And so he's got an uphill battle.
Ilango, do elections held at this time then incentivize leaders to sound tougher on Cambodia, even if this is going to undermine diplomacy?
Domestic politics, of course, they always play an important role. And I think part of the reason, from my perspective, why this conflict took place is because of domestic changes in both countries. I mean, there's been change of leadership, etc. And now Thailand going into an election. I think, like our colleague from Thailand, Bangkok mentioned just now, you know, there is a possibility of, you know, trying to make use of this conflict to garner votes, etc. So that could complicate matters.
Who do you think, Ilango, just one more question for you before I move on to Chhean. Who do you think benefits the most in Thai politics from this escalation?
Oh, well, I mean, the military, of course, is in charge of the whole issue, you know, right? They see that this is they are the drivers of this matter, and they need to resolve this on their own. So I think at the end of the day, the military will have to play the first primary role. The political parties, I think, they are secondary to this conflict. But, you know, I suppose the beneficiaries, to some extent, if they can successfully politicize this issue.
Chhean, from Cambodia's perspective, is Phnom Penh waiting out the Thai elections before perhaps making any concessions?
Well, we always wish to see a stable and, you know, a more reasonable Thai government that prioritize peace, stability, and respect of international law. And the chemistry that have been evolving in Thai politics is very dangerous. The rise of nationalism, unstable politics, and the rise of militarism. This is very dangerous development. So we expect to see more of a civilian rule with kind of more democratic political system, so that can create a more conducive environment for peace and dialogue.
So is the belief in Cambodia, Chhean, that a new Thai government can offer some sort of diplomatic reset when it comes to these border issues, or are they going to reopen old wounds?
We hope to see a reset of diplomatic engagement and peaceful coexistence, but as long as the military and the monarchy remain in power or the driving force of this politics, then it's very hard to have a peaceful coexistence with Thailand. So we hope to see a more civilian government and more democratic government of Thailand.
Phil, you were shaking your head just a moment ago. Is there something that you wanted to say?
Well, I don't think that there's going to be a
Yes.
significant reset in Thai politics. I think that ultimately, at the end of the day, neither side can wait till February 8th for an election to take place to start settling this dispute. I mean, that's like 2 months away. So, I think that we want to have this moving towards a ceasefire, in the next, week or two, or, early in the new year. And it's very interesting that, Donald Trump has completely disappeared from the scene. This is the guy who flew into KL with great pomp and circumstance and signed the KL Police Accord. He insisted that it be done, with him present. But, now that it's really gotten tough and the issues have come back up, he's missing in action. So, once again, we're seeing that the American president is, all about himself and all about the Nobel Peace Prize and trying to use others to benefit himself. But when, it really comes to the challenge of tough diplomacy, he seems to be absent.
So, Phil, is the belief in Bangkok that the government there genuinely wants peace, or are domestic political incentives pushing leaders to just talk tough and stay tough?
I think there's a mix here. I think that, there are some in the political parties who want to talk tough. The issue of the scam centers, which are, widespread in Cambodia and have put Cambodia at the center of international community concern about online criminality is a big issue here. But, I think that ultimately, pragmatically, you can't have 500,000 people dispossessed from their homes for months and months on end. I think that there has to be a solution found. And I think that people within the foreign ministry and other places within the government will pressure for a reasonable ceasefire. But the issue of the landmines needs to be addressed. And, it's quite clear from the information and evidence presented at the Geneva that the Ottawa Convention member states are very concerned about the use of landmines by Cambodia in this conflict, and there needs to be a real investigation of that.
Elango,
I just would like to
go ahead.
on the
Go ahead, Chhean.
the landmine issue. We need a third-party verifications, and so far it's in the process of investigation. So
That's
we should
the
not
Ottawa
rely
Convention.
on
The Ottawa Convention.
the news from the Thai military, which is very biased, and this sometimes disinformation warfare. On online gambling, this is a global issues. Rather than attacking, invading Cambodia, using fighter jets, I think we can cooperate to deal with this issue together, like what Cambodia is working with South Korea, with Japan, and other countries in tackling this online scamming. It is a global issue, and Thailand also a major transit point and also a hub of this online scamming. So we need to work together to address all this.
Okay,
I
Phil,
don't
just
think
go
using
ahead and
fighter
respond.
jets to solve this online scamming is effective.
All right, Phil, just go ahead and respond, and then I'll bring in Elango.
Well, I think that on the landmine issue, it's very clear that the ASEAN Observer team has looked at the evidence and said that these were newly laid landmines, but they were old landmines. So somehow Cambodia was keeping them in a warehouse somewhere, which is a clear violation of the Ottawa Convention. And Cambodia has been a champion of that convention, and they've been praised for doing that. So it's very disconcerting, I think, to many member states of the Ottawa Convention. And I have to speak as a former member of Human Rights Watch, which was one of the core members of the international campaign to ban landmines, to say that we're incredibly disappointed define, this kind of duplicity that, landmines were kept and then are being laid.
Right.
So Ottawa Convention needs to do an investigation, and that's the third party that has to be involved.
Okay, we'll just move the conversation on. I'll have to bring in Elango because we're coming to the end of the show.
Yeah.
My apologies, Chhean. But Elango, if we just go back to the issue of diplomacy, if it fails again, what's the most likely outcome, do you think? I mean, is it a prolonged stalemate? Is it further escalation? What happens?
If it fails, well, I think then we're looking at prolonged sort of stalemate. We might enter into something like a Myanmar kind of an issue where, the thing drags on for a long time without resolution. But, I hesitate to think in that sense because between Cambodia and Thailand, there has been sporadic skirmishes before, and they have been able to sort of tamp it down. But this time, of course, there are many factors which are coming into play, and they are all building into the whole narrative. So, but the feeling that I'm sort of getting from talking to various people around is that I think there is, a sense that they need to try and at least bring some kind of a ceasefire that can hold. So I think we should wait to see what happens in Kuala Lumpur before, we jump into some negative type of conclusion, right?
Okay, on that note, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much to my guests, Chhean, Vannarith, Elango, Caro Penin, and Phil Robertson. Thanks for joining us. Thank you for watching. You can see the program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. For further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. Join the conversation on X as well. Our handle is AJ Inside Story. For myself and the whole team here in Doha, thanks for watching. Bye-bye for now.